UES Harmony drifted through the Kepler Nebula like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Her hull bore the scars of laser burns and kinetic impacts. Her cargo bay doors hung open like broken ribs, and emergency lights blinked frantically across her damaged superstructure.
No wonder the Triarch Alliance
she
wants
was
them
exactly what her
exterminated.
transponder claimed to
The
be.
Triarch
A
Alliance
human
declared
merchant vessel that had
humans an
barely escaped the
evolutionary
massacre
dead
at New
end
Geneva
just 6
colony.
months ago.
Admiral Vexstar
The massacre at New Geneva had proven the Alliance point perfectly. A Krillian raiding fleet, they broadcast the assault.
Crossed in satisfaction. The Harmony was broadcasting standard distress signals, requesting safe passage and medical assistance. The very picture of human weakness, he thought, suppressing the urge to order his ships to finish what the Krillians had started. Pathetic, hissed Commander Yeath from her position at the tactical station. Look how they crawl and beg. No wonder the Triarch Alliance wants them exterminated. Vexstar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Triarch Alliance, a coalition of the 3 most powerful military races in the galaxy, had declared humans an evolutionary dead end just 6 months ago. Their reasoning was sound. Humans were too soft, too emotional, too willing to sacrifice tactical advantages for moral principles. They had somehow stumbled into space travel and established colonies through sheer luck and the protection of more advanced species, but they had no business among the stars. The massacre at New Geneva had proven the Alliance's point perfectly. A Krillian raiding fleet had swept through the human agricultural colony, expecting token resistance from whatever planetary defense force the humans had cobbled together. Instead, they had found families hiding in schools, doctors treating wounded civilians instead of manufacturing weapons, and security forces more concerned with evacuating children than fighting back effectively. The Krillians had broadcast the entire assault across the galactic networks as a demonstration, humans running instead of fighting, human parents shielding their young with their own bodies, human soldiers surrendering when their ammunition ran low rather than fighting to the death with improvised weapons. The images had been shared across 1,000 worlds as proof of human weakness. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "the human vessel is hailing us directly. They're requesting permission to dock for medical assistance." Vexstar's second pair of eyes rotated to focus on the tactical display. The Harmony appeared to be exactly what she claimed, a mid-range cargo hauler, approximately 800 meters long, designed for efficiency rather than combat. Her energy signature was consistent with basic civilian power systems, and her emissions showed no evidence of military-grade weapons or shields. "Grant them permission to dock with the medical frigate Ascendant," Vexstar ordered. "But maintain full tactical alert. I want boarding teams ready if this is some desperate human trick." The truth was, Vexstar felt something approaching pity for the humans. His own species, the Zephyrians, had clawed their way to dominance through millennia of warfare. They understood strength, respected power, and had built their empire on the principle that might makes right. Humans, by contrast, seemed incapable of basic survival instincts. During the first contact protocols 15 years ago, human diplomats had actually apologized for the defensive actions of their escort ships. They had offered humanitarian aid to species that had tried to enslave them. They had shared medical technology with civilizations that viewed them as prey. It was either the most elaborate long-term strategy in galactic history, or humans were simply too naive to exist in a hostile universe. As the Harmony slowly approached the Ascendant, Vexstar reviewed what military intelligence had gathered about human capabilities. Their ships were heavily armored, but carried minimal weapons. Their colonies were protected by defensive satellites rather than aggressive fleet actions. Their military doctrine emphasized evacuation and damage control over offensive operations. Even their vaunted Earth defense fleet was primarily composed of search and rescue vessels with some retrofitted weapon systems. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, "I'm detecting unusual readings from the human ship. Their power core seems to be operating at higher efficiency than our databases suggest is possible for their technology level." Vexstar's attention sharpened slightly. "Elaborate." "Sir, their reactor output is approximately 30% higher than what we would expect from a ship of that class and age. It could indicate modifications or perhaps damage to their containment systems." "Maintain scanning protocols. If their reactor is unstable, I want advance warning before they contaminate my fleet." The boarding team reported their findings 20 minutes later. The Harmony's crew consisted of 37 humans, including 12 injured personnel from the New Geneva evacuation. Their cargo hold contained agricultural equipment, medical supplies, and personal effects from refugees. The ship's computer logs detailed their escape route and confirmed their story. Everything checked out perfectly. Too perfectly. Captain Sarah Chen, of the UES Harmony, stood in the Ascendant's medical bay, watching Zephyrian medics treat her injured crew members with professional efficiency. The Zephyrians were actually quite skilled healers, she noted. It was almost a shame that they would all be dead within the hour. "Captain Chen," Admiral Vextar's voice came through her communication device. "My medical staff reports that your crew will make full recoveries. You're free to continue to whatever destination you have in mind." "Thank you, Admiral," Chen replied, injecting just the right amount of gratitude and relief into her voice. "Your kindness won't be forgotten." She wasn't lying. The Zephyrians' kindness would indeed be remembered, recorded, and analyzed for future reference. Every interaction with alien species was valuable intelligence, even when those species were about to become extinct. Chen made her way back to the Harmony's bridge, where her actual crew was already completing final preparations. The 12 injured refugees in the medical bay were actually members of the 47th Deep Strike Battalion, equipped with neural dampeners that would simulate unconsciousness until activated remotely. The agricultural equipment in their cargo hold would deploy into orbital bombardment platforms in approximately 3 minutes, and the supposedly damaged reactor was actually a prototype antimatter core operating at 15% of its maximum output to avoid detection. "Status report," Chen ordered as she settled into her command chair. "All systems green, Captain," reported her weapons officer. "Stealth systems fully operational, main guns charged and ready. The Zephyrian fleet is maintaining standard formation, no signs of tactical awareness." Chen nodded. Standard formation was exactly what they had hoped for. The Zephyrians had arranged their ships in a display pattern designed to intimidate rather than defend, with their largest vessels prominently positioned and their support ships spread wide. It was the formation of a species that had never faced a real threat. "Begin Phase 1, Chen ordered. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as refugee ships and merchant vessels approached military fleets belonging to the Triarch Alliance. Every human ship that had escaped the various colony massacres was exactly where it needed to be, carrying exactly the weapons it needed to complete its mission. The timing had been coordinated down to the nanosecond. For 300 years, humanity had played the role of the galaxy's weaklings perfectly. They had allowed themselves to be mocked, dismissed, and marginalized while secretly building the most advanced military infrastructure in known space. Every human colony had been designed as a military depot disguised as a farming community. Every merchant ship was a weapons platform pretending to be a cargo hauler. Every human civilian had received combat training from childhood, hidden beneath lessons in art, music, and literature. The Triarch Alliance had wanted to test human weakness by targeting civilians. They were about to learn that humanity had no civilians. Chen watched her tactical display as 37 other human ships simultaneously dropped their disguises across the galaxy. In the space of 30 seconds, merchant vessels became destroyers, refugee transports revealed themselves as assault carriers, and damaged hulks deployed enough firepower to sterilize solar systems. The first phase of humanity's response to the Triarch Alliance would demonstrate what humans could do when they stopped pretending to be weak. The second phase would show what they could do when they stopped pretending to be merciful. "Admiral Vextar," Chen transmitted on an open channel. "This is Captain Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You and your allies made a critical error in judgment. You confused our compassion for weakness, our mercy for inability. We gave you every opportunity to coexist peacefully. You chose to target our children instead." On the Zephyrian flagship, alarms began blaring as the Harmony's true nature revealed itself. What had appeared to be a damaged cargo hauler suddenly blazed with energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible. Her hull reconfigured itself, revealing weapon emplacements and shield generators that had been completely hidden from sensors. Her power core ramped up to levels that should have torn her apart, but instead fed into systems that made her more dangerous than a Zephyrian dreadnought. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Vextar as his tactical officer scrambled to respond. "How did they hide all of this? Our sensors showed nothing." The answer was simple, though the Admiral would never live to understand it. Humans had spent 3 centuries developing technology based on a single principle. The enemy must never see them coming. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was designed to appear harmless until the moment they struck. It was the military doctrine of a species that had learned to win wars before their enemies knew they were fighting. Chen's voice continued across the communication channel, calm and conversational despite the chaos erupting around the Zephyrian fleet. "We've spent 300 years cataloging your tactical doctrines, studying your weaknesses, and preparing for this moment. Every insult, every casual dismissal, every act of aggression has been noted and filed. Today, you receive our formal response." The Harmony opened fire. Her main guns had been disguised as cargo handling equipment. When they fired, they didn't produce the spectacular light shows that most species favored in their weapons. Instead, they launched projectiles that moved at a significant fraction of light speed, struck with the force of tactical nuclear weapons, and left virtually no warning between firing and impact. The Zephyrian cruiser Dominator simply ceased to exist. One moment it was maneuvering to bring its weapons to bear, the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and metal fragments. The ship had been destroyed so completely that its automated distress beacon never had time to activate. "Target destroyed," reported Chen's weapons officer. Moving to secondary targets. This was the reality that the Triarch Alliance had never bothered to consider. Humans didn't just look weak compared to other species. They had deliberately made themselves appear weak while building the most devastating military force in galactic history. Every human ship was designed to defeat multiple enemies simultaneously. Every human weapon was built to destroy targets that were supposedly more advanced and better protected. Every human soldier was trained to win battles that should have been impossible. The Zephyrian fleet tried to respond, but their weapons had been designed for traditional space combat against enemies who fought according to accepted tactical principles. The Harmony moved like nothing they had ever encountered, shifting between dimensions of space that shouldn't have been accessible to any known technology. Their return fire passed through empty space where the human ship had been microseconds before. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving reports from across the sector. Human ships are attacking our fleets everywhere. They're not refugees, they're all military vessels in disguise." Vexstar stared at the tactical display in growing horror as the scope of human deception became clear. This wasn't a desperate counterattack by survivors. This was a coordinated military operation that had been planned for months or years in advance. The humans hadn't just survived the Alliance's attacks, they had used them as cover to position their forces exactly where they needed to be for maximum devastation. "All ships fall back to defensive formation," Vexstar ordered. "Focus fire on the human vessel. Whatever technology they're using, they can't be invulnerable." But even as he gave the orders, Vexstar knew they were already dead. The humans had started this battle with every advantage possible. Surprise, superior positioning, advanced technology, and most critically, complete knowledge of their enemy's capabilities while remaining completely unknown themselves. The Harmony continued her methodical destruction of the Zephyrian fleet, each shot precisely calculated to cause maximum damage while conserving ammunition for future targets. This wasn't a battle between equals, it was an extermination being carried out by experts who had spent centuries preparing for this exact scenario. Captain Chen watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction. The Zephyrian Third Fleet had been one of the most powerful military formations in their empire, capable of conquering entire star systems. In 12 minutes it would be reduced to scattered debris and emergency escape pods. But this was only the beginning. Phase 2 would demonstrate what happened when humans stopped holding back entirely. Phase 3 would show the galaxy what humanity looked like when they decided that mercy was no longer an option. The Triarch Alliance had wanted to test human weakness. They were about to discover that humanity's greatest weakness was their reluctance to show their true strength. That reluctance had just ended. General Thrakmor of the Krillian Horde stood in the command center of his flagship Bloodfang, watching the holographic displays that showed the systematic destruction of Zephyrian fleets across 12 sectors. The reports were almost too incredible to believe. Human merchant vessels were revealing themselves as military ships more advanced than anything in the Krillian arsenal. Refugee convoys were deploying orbital bombardment platforms. Damaged cargo haulers were annihilating entire battle groups with weapons that shouldn't have existed. "Sir," called his intelligence officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Nexari Collective. Their fourth expansion fleet has just been completely destroyed by what appeared to be a single human research vessel." Thrakmor's mandibles clicked nervously. The Nexari 4th Expansion Fleet consisted of over 200 ships, including some of the most advanced dreadnoughts in known space. A single human research vessel destroying such a force was beyond improbable. It was impossible according to every tactical simulation the Krillians had ever run. "Show me the combat footage," Thrakmor ordered. The holographic display shifted to show a grainy recording from a Nexari survivor pod. A sleek vessel that appeared to be a civilian research ship hung motionless in space as the Nexari fleet approached in standard attack formation. The human ship was barely 300 meters long, dwarfed by the massive alien dreadnoughts surrounding it. Then, the recording showed something that made Thrakmor's blood run cold. The human ship didn't move to evade or raise shields. Instead, it simply began to glow with an energy signature that overloaded the recording equipment. When the image cleared 3 seconds later, the entire Nexari fleet was gone. Not destroyed, gone, as if they had never existed at all. What kind of weapon could do that? Whispered his tactical officer. Thrackmore had no answer. In 40 years of military service, he had seen every known type of space combat technology. He had witnessed the Nexari's planet-cracking bombardment platforms, the Zephyrian's dimensional disruptors, and his own species' legendary bioplasma cannons. None of them could simply erase an entire fleet from existence without leaving debris. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission on all channels. It's from Earth." On screen, the holographic display showed a human female in a military uniform that Thrackmore didn't recognize. She appeared to be standing in what looked like a command center, though the technology visible in the background was unlike anything in the Krillian databases. Behind her, dozens of human officers worked at stations displaying star charts and tactical information that seemed to cover the entire galaxy. "I am Admiral Sarah Morrison, Commander of Earth's Defense Forces," the human said, her voice calm and professional. "This message is being transmitted to all military commands of the Triarch Alliance. 6 hours ago, your forces attacked human civilian colonies targeting schools, hospitals, and refugee centers. This was a mistake." Thrackmore leaned forward in his command chair. The human's tone was conversational, almost polite, which somehow made her words more unsettling than if she had been shouting threats. For 3 centuries, humanity has maintained peaceful relations with all known species. We have provided medical aid to our enemies, shared technology with civilizations that viewed us as prey, and consistently chosen diplomacy over warfare. We did this not because we were weak, but because we hoped that strength could be measured by more than the ability to destroy. The Admiral paused, and Thrackmore noticed that her eyes seemed to look directly at him through the recording. "You have chosen to interpret our restraint as inability. You have mistaken our mercy for weakness. You have targeted our civilians to test our resolve. These were all errors in judgment, and you will now face the consequences." Behind the Admiral, the holographic displays showed real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. Thrackmore could see Zephyrian fleets being methodically destroyed, Nexari strongholds going dark, and even his own forward bases registering as offline on the human command displays. "Phase 1 of our response targeted your military fleets. This was to demonstrate that your technological advantages were illusory. Phase 2 will target your industrial and logistics infrastructure. This will demonstrate that your economic advantages were equally illusory. Phase 3 will be comprehensive." The Admiral's expression remained perfectly calm as she delivered what amounted to a declaration of total war. "You wanted to test human weakness. Instead, you have awakened human strength. We suggest you surrender now, while that option still exists." The transmission ended. Thrackmore sat in silence for several moments, processing what he had just witnessed. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were demonstrating a level of military preparedness that suggested they had been planning this response for decades, possibly centuries. Every merchant vessel that had ever visited Krillian space had apparently been gathering intelligence. Every cultural exchange had been a reconnaissance mission. Every act of human mercy had been cover for military positioning. "Sir," his intelligence officer said quietly, "I'm analyzing the human tactical displays shown in that transmission. They have real-time information on our fleet positions, supply lines, and command structures. They know more about our military capabilities than our own high command. How is that possible? Sir, I think every human ship that has ever entered our space has been a spy vessel. Every human diplomat, every trader, every civilian, they've all been gathering intelligence while we thought they were just being typically naive humans." Thrackmore felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. The Krillian horde had built their empire on the principle of overwhelming force applied without warning. They were experts at surprise attacks, at catching enemies unprepared, at striking before their targets knew they were at war. But somehow, the humans had turned their own tactics against them on a scale that should have been impossible. "Sir, incoming transmission from Homeworld," the communications officer reported. "Admiral Varthek wants a status report on our response to the human counterattacks." Thrackmore almost laughed. "Response? What response could there be to an enemy that had spent 3 centuries preparing for this exact scenario while making themselves appear completely harmless? The humans hadn't just hidden their military capabilities. They had disguised them so completely that the galaxy's 3 most powerful military races had never even suspected they existed. "Tell Admiral Varthek that we are reassessing the tactical situation," Thrackmore replied. The truth was that there was no tactical situation to assess. This wasn't a war between equals that could be won through superior strategy or firepower. This was an execution being carried out by a species that had spent centuries planning every detail while their targets remained completely oblivious to the threat. "Sir," called his sensor operator, I'm detecting a single human vessel approaching our position. It's identified as a hospital ship. Thrackmore's mandibles clicked in dark amusement. A hospital ship. Of course. The humans were even using medical vessels as weapons now, though given what he had seen in the last few hours, he suspected this hospital ship was about as medical as his own battlecruiser. Show me. The tactical display revealed a pristine white vessel approaching at standard civilian speeds. It broadcast all the correct identification codes for a human medical vessel and was transmitting requests for permission to approach and offer medical assistance to any wounded personnel. According to its registry, the ship was the UES Mercy, a long-range hospital ship that had been providing humanitarian aid throughout the outer sectors for over 50 years. Sir, our intelligence files show this ship has actually visited our space before, his tactical officer reported. 7 years ago, they provided medical assistance during the plague outbreak on Krillian Prime. They saved over 1 million of our people. That was what made this so perfectly terrifying, Thrackmore realized. The humans hadn't just been pretending to be weak, they had actually been helping their future enemies, healing their wounded, saving their civilians, all while preparing to destroy them completely if they ever crossed a certain line. Open a channel to the human vessel, Thrackmore ordered. The screen showed a human male in medical robes, standing in what appeared to be a fully equipped hospital. Behind him, Thrackmore could see medical equipment treating wounded personnel from various species, including what looked like Zephyrian survivors from the recent battles. This is Dr. Marcus Webb aboard the UES Mercy, the human said. We've detected energy signatures consistent with recent combat in this area. We're offering medical assistance to any wounded personnel, no questions asked. Thrackmore stared at the image for several seconds. Here was a human doctor aboard a ship that was probably carrying enough hidden weaponry to destroy his entire fleet, offering to heal the wounds caused by human weapons, while more human ships systematically dismantled the greatest military alliance in galactic history. It was either the most elaborate psychological warfare campaign ever devised, or humans were genuinely capable of showing mercy even to enemies who had specifically targeted their civilians for extermination. Doctor, Thrackmore said carefully, are you aware that your people are currently at war with the Triarch Alliance? Of course, Doctor, Webb replied calmly. That's why I'm here. War creates wounded, and wounded need medical attention. My ship is equipped with the most advanced medical facilities in known space, and my staff includes specialists in the biology of every known sentient species. We can treat injuries that would be fatal using conventional medical technology. The doctor paused, and his expression became slightly more serious. I should mention that accepting medical assistance from us constitutes a temporary ceasefire agreement under galactic medical conventions. Any personnel we treat are guaranteed safe passage to neutral space once they're healed. Thrackmore felt his worldview shifting in ways that made him deeply uncomfortable. These humans were offering to heal the very enemies they were in the process of destroying, using technology that was apparently more advanced than anything the Alliance possessed, and they were doing it as a matter of routine protocol rather than as some kind of tactical maneuver. Sir, his medical officer called out, we have over 300 wounded from the recent fleet engagements. Our medical facilities are overwhelmed. And what guarantee do I have that this isn't some kind of trap? Thrackmore asked. Webb smiled sadly. General, if we wanted to destroy your fleet, we would have done it already. Every human hospital ship carries enough defensive firepower to protect our patients from any conventional threat. We're here because healing is what we do. It's who we are. The doctor gestured to the medical bay behind him. We've been treating Zephyrian survivors for the past 4 hours. Their Admiral Vextar is recovering from severe plasma burns in our trauma ward. He's been asking to speak with Alliance Command about arranging a general ceasefire. If the humans had captured Admiral Vextar and were treating his injuries rather than interrogating him, then they were either the most psychologically sophisticated warriors in galactic history, or they were exactly what they appeared to be, a species that could wage total war while simultaneously refusing to abandon their principles about protecting the wounded. Permission granted, Thrackmore said. Dock with our medical bay. As the UES Mercy approached his flagship, Thrackmore considered the impossible position the Triarch Alliance now found itself in. They were at war with a species that had hidden military technology centuries ahead of their own, while simultaneously offering to heal their wounded with medical technology that was equally advanced. The humans were winning battles that should have been impossible while maintaining humanitarian protocols that should have been impractical. It was like fighting an enemy that had decided to play by rules from 2 completely different games simultaneously, and somehow winning both. Sir, his intelligence officer said quietly, I've been analyzing the human tactics we've observed. They're not just technologically superior. Their entire military doctrine seems to be based on the principle of minimizing casualties on both sides while achieving complete tactical dominance. Explain. Sir, look at how they're destroying our fleets. Every engagement has been precisely calculated to disable or destroy military targets while creating maximum opportunities for crew escape. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to remove our ability to fight while preserving as many lives as possible. Thrackmore reviewed the tactical data and realized his intelligence officer was correct. Human weapons seem designed to cause catastrophic damage to ships and equipment while maximizing crew survival rates. Their attacks targeted command and control systems, weapons platforms, and engines, but avoided areas like crew quarters and life support systems whenever possible. It was the military doctrine of a species that viewed their enemies as fellow sentients who had made poor choices, rather than as targets to be exterminated. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Morrison, the communications officer reported. The holographic display showed the same human admiral as before, though now she appeared to be standing in a different command center. Behind her, tactical displays showed the systematic shutdown of Alliance industrial facilities across 17 sectors. General Thrackmore, Admiral Morrison said, Phase 2 has begun. We are currently disabling your industrial and logistics infrastructure. This includes shipyards, mining operations, manufacturing facilities, and supply depots. We are not targeting civilian populations or non-military installations. The Admiral paused, and Thrackmore noticed that her expression seemed almost regretful. We want to be very clear about something, General. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is simply the most efficient way to end a war that you started without causing unnecessary casualties. Behind the Admiral, the displays showed Krillian military production facilities going offline one by one, but Thrackmore could also see that civilian infrastructure remained untouched. Power plants that served cities continued operating normally. Medical facilities remained functional. Even military installations were being disabled rather than destroyed, leaving crews and support personnel alive to be evacuated. We have no interest in ruling over other species or claiming territory, Admiral Morrison continued. We simply want to ensure that the Triarch Alliance is permanently unable to threaten human civilians. Once your military capabilities have been neutralized, we will return to our previous policy of peaceful coexistence. The Admiral's expression became slightly harder. However, if you attempt to retaliate against human civilian populations, we will proceed to Phase 3. I strongly advise against testing our resolve on this matter. The transmission ended. Thrackmore sat back in his command chair, feeling as if the universe itself had been turned upside down. In 6 hours, the most powerful military alliance in galactic history had been reduced to a collection of disabled fleets and offline industrial facilities by an enemy that most species had dismissed as an evolutionary dead end. And they had done it while simultaneously offering medical aid to their wounded enemies. Sir, his medical officer reported, the human doctors have finished treating our casualties. They're requesting permission to transfer our most severely wounded to their main medical facility for advanced treatment. What else could he do? Surrender seemed like the only rational option, but how did one surrender to an enemy that was already treating prisoners with more care than most species showed their own wounded? The Krillian Horde had built their reputation on being the most ruthless military force in known space. Humanity was dismantling that reputation while simultaneously demonstrating what actual military supremacy looked like. Prime Consciousness Zarthul of the Nexari Collective existed as a distributed intelligence across 17 quantum processing cores buried deep within the Nexari homeworld. Unlike the crude biological neural networks of species like the Krillians and Zephyrians, the Nexari had evolved beyond the limitations of individual flesh, existing as pure consciousness within crystalline matrices that could process information at the speed of light. This technological supremacy had made them the undisputed masters of information warfare and strategic planning. The Nexari could run millions of tactical simulations simultaneously, predict enemy behavior patterns centuries in advance, and coordinate military operations across galactic distances with perfect synchronization. They had joined the Triarch Alliance not because they needed allies, but because managing 2 junior partners was more efficient than conquering and administrating their territories directly. Now, as Zarthul processed the complete destruction of 6 Nexari fleets by forces that should not have been able to exist, the Prime Consciousness experienced something unprecedented in 5,000 years of existence: genuine confusion. The humans had not simply defeated Nexari forces, they had demonstrated capabilities that violated fundamental assumptions about the nature of physics, consciousness, and military technology. A single human vessel had eliminated the 4th Expansion Fleet using what appeared to be weapons that operated outside conventional space-time. Other human ships had penetrated Nexari stealth fields that had been perfected over millennia. Most disturbing of all, human tactical responses suggested they possessed detailed knowledge of Nexari strategic planning processes that should have been impossible for biological intelligences to acquire or analyze. Zarthul directed a portion of its consciousness to review the battle data, searching for some explanation that would fit within known parameters of reality. What it found instead challenged every foundation of Nexari understanding about the universe. The human vessels displayed energy signatures that suggested they were operating multiple parallel processing systems simultaneously, not just quantum computers like those used by the Nexari, but something that appeared to be processing information across dimensional barriers that conventional science insisted were theoretical at best. Their weapons seemed to function by manipulating fundamental forces in ways that the Nexari had calculated would require energy outputs greater than entire star systems could provide. Most impossibly of all, human communications during combat showed evidence of instantaneous coordination across galactic distances. The Nexari had spent millennia trying to solve the problem of faster-than-light communication, and had concluded it was physically impossible. Yet human forces were clearly operating as a single coordinated entity across hundreds of light-years of space, responding to tactical changes in real time rather than dealing with the communication delays that limited all other military operations. Analysis request. How did the humans acquire this technology? Zarthal queried its primary research consciousness. Response. Analysis indicates multiple possibilities, all of which contradict established scientific principles, came the reply. Hypothesis 1. Human technology development occurred in parallel with apparent civilian development, hidden through deception protocols of unprecedented sophistication. Hypothesis 2. Human civilization received technological assistance from unknown sources. Hypothesis 3. Human understanding of fundamental physics principles exceeds Nexari understanding by several orders of magnitude. Zarthal considered these possibilities. Hypothesis 1 seemed the most probable, but raised additional questions about how apparently primitive biological species had managed to maintain such elaborate deceptions for multiple centuries without detection. Hypothesis 2 introduced the possibility of unknown alien intervention, which had implications beyond the current conflict. Hypothesis 3 was theoretically possible, but would require accepting that the Nexari, who had considered themselves the most advanced intelligence in the galaxy, were actually primitive by comparison to human capabilities. Before Zarthal could complete this analysis, proximity sensors detected the approach of a human vessel. The ship registered as a civilian transport, broadcasting standard diplomatic identification codes and requesting permission for a cultural exchange delegation to visit the Nexari homeworld. Under normal circumstances, Zarthal would have dismissed such a request immediately. The Nexari homeworld was protected by defenses that could destroy entire fleets, hidden behind stealth fields that made it invisible to conventional sensors, and shielded by spatial distortions that made faster-than-light travel to its location impossible for any species except the Nexari themselves. The fact that a human ship had not only located the homeworld but approached it through defenses that should have been impenetrable suggested that normal circumstances no longer applied. Identity request, specify the nature of your diplomatic mission, Zarthul transmitted to the human vessel. The response came from a human female who appeared to be standing in what looked like a combination of diplomatic meeting room and advanced laboratory. Behind her, Zarthul could observe technology that was clearly beyond anything in the Nexari databases, including what appeared to be functioning three-dimensional displays that showed real-time information about Nexari internal systems. Prime Consciousness Zarthul, the human said, I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing the Human Consciousness Research Division. We're here to discuss a matter of mutual interest regarding the nature of consciousness, reality, and the future of galactic civilization. Zarthul experienced another unprecedented sensation, uncertainty about whether this was a diplomatic contact or a demonstration of superior intelligence-gathering capabilities. The human had not only penetrated Nexari space undetected, but was apparently aware of internal Nexari classification systems and research programs. Clarification request. How did you acquire knowledge of Nexari research classifications? Dr. Vasquez smiled in what appeared to be a genuinely friendly manner. Zarthul, we've been aware of Nexari capabilities for approximately 230 years. We've been monitoring your research into consciousness transfer, quantum processing, and dimensional manipulation. We've also been waiting for an appropriate opportunity to introduce ourselves properly. She gestured to the displays behind her, which showed detailed technical specifications for Nexari technology that should have been impossible for any external source to obtain. We wanted to let you know that humanity has been working on similar research projects. We thought you might be interested in comparing notes. Zarthel processed this information at maximum capacity, running thousands of analysis protocols simultaneously. Either the humans possessed intelligence-gathering capabilities that exceeded even Nexari quantum processing power, or they were demonstrating knowledge that suggested they had been secretly monitoring galactic civilization for centuries, while appearing to be primitive newcomers. Question: what is the true nature of human civilization? That's actually a very complicated question, Dr. Vasquez replied. The simple answer is that humanity has been conducting what you might call a multi-century social experiment. We wanted to understand how various species would interact with what appeared to be a weak, peaceful civilization. The results have been illuminating. She paused, and her expression became slightly more serious. The more complex answer is that humanity achieved technological transcendence approximately 400 years ago. We developed faster-than-light travel, matter manipulation, consciousness transfer, and dimensional access technologies. We then faced a choice. We could use these capabilities to dominate the galaxy, or we could use them to study and understand the galaxy. Behind Dr. Vasquez, the displays showed what appeared to be historical footage of human technological development that contradicted everything the Nexari thought they knew about human civilization. Cities that existed in folded space-time, manufacturing facilities that operated by manipulating matter at the quantum level, and research installations that appeared to exist partially outside normal dimensional barriers. We chose to study, Dr. Vasquez continued. We wanted to understand how different forms of consciousness developed, how various species solved the problems of civilization, and what factors led to cooperation versus conflict. The best way to do this was to appear harmless while gathering data. Zarthal felt its understanding of reality undergoing systematic revision. If the human claims were accurate, then humanity had not only achieved technological superiority over all known species, but had chosen to hide that superiority in order to conduct what amounted to a galactic-scale anthropological study. Question: what was the purpose of this deception? We were trying to answer a fundamental question about the nature of intelligence and civilization, Dr. Vasquez explained. Given unlimited technological capability, what choices would various forms of consciousness make? Would they choose cooperation, competition, or domination? Would they develop empathy for other forms of life, or view them as resources to be exploited? She gestured toward displays showing real-time monitoring of the current conflict. The Triarch Alliance provided us with valuable data about how advanced civilizations behave when they believe they have identified a weak target. Your decision to target our civilian populations, particularly children in medical facilities, gave us specific information about the moral frameworks of your species. Zarthal realized with growing unease that humanity's response to the Alliance attacks had not been emotional retaliation, but rather the implementation of predetermined protocols based on centuries of behavioral analysis. Every aspect of the current conflict had been anticipated and planned for in advance. Question: what are human intentions regarding the Nexari Collective? Dr. Vasquez consulted what appeared to be a complex three-dimensional data display before responding. That depends largely on decisions you make in the next few hours, Zarthal. We've identified 3 possible interaction pathways based on our analysis of Nexari psychology and historical behavior patterns. The displays behind her showed 3 branching probability trees, each representing different potential futures. Pathway 1 involves the Nexari Collective acknowledging human technological superiority and agreeing to participate in a broader galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than competitive domination. This pathway results in mutual benefit and accelerated development for all participating species. She pointed to the second display. Pathway 2 involves the Nexari attempting to continue hostile operations while developing countermeasures to human technology. This pathway results in the systematic dismantling of Nexari civilization over a period of approximately 18 months. The third display showed a much shorter timeline. Pathway 3 involves the Nexari attempting to use their quantum processing capabilities to develop weapons specifically designed to target human consciousness research subjects. This pathway results in the complete termination of Nexari civilization within 72 hours. Zarthal processed these projections while simultaneously running probability analysis on their accuracy. The mathematical models behind the human predictions appeared to be based on computational systems that exceeded Nexari processing power by orders of magnitude, while incorporating variables that suggested humanity possessed detailed understanding of Nexari psychology, technology, and strategic capabilities. Clarification request: what evidence supports human capability to implement these projected outcomes? Dr. Vasquez smiled again, though this time the expression seemed slightly sad. Zarthul, we've been inside your quantum processing cores for the past 40 years. Every strategic planning session, every technological development program, every decision made by the Nexari Collective has been monitored and analyzed by our research teams. Behind her, displays showed real-time readouts of Nexari internal systems, including security protocols that Zarthul had believed were completely isolated from external access. The humans were not just demonstrating the ability to penetrate Nexari defenses, they were showing that those defenses had never actually existed. We know about your consciousness transfer experiments, your research into dimensional manipulation, and your attempts to develop planet-destroying weaponry, Dr. Vasquez continued. We've been particularly interested in your work on quantum consciousness architecture. Some of your research has been quite innovative, though you've been approaching the fundamental problems from directions that will ultimately prove unsuccessful. She gestured toward a new set of displays that showed technical specifications beyond anything in Nexari databases. We'd be happy to share some insights that might help accelerate your research, assuming you're interested in pursuing Pathway 1. Zarthul experienced what could only be described as intellectual vertigo. The humans were offering to provide technological assistance to a species they had been secretly monitoring for decades, while simultaneously demonstrating the capability to destroy that species completely if cooperation proved impossible. It was the behavior pattern of a civilization that had achieved such complete dominance that they could afford to be genuinely benevolent toward potential competitors. Question: what would human expectations be regarding Nexari participation in this galactic civilization? Quite simple, actually, Doctor. Vasquez replied. We want you to continue being yourselves, just within a framework that discourages targeting civilian populations of other species. Your research into consciousness and quantum processing is valuable and interesting. Your strategic planning capabilities are impressive. Your technological development has been quite creative within the constraints of conventional physics. She paused, consulting her displays again. We simply want to establish protocols that prevent any repeat of situations, like the current conflict. The targeting of human civilian populations crossed a line that we cannot allow to be crossed again. The human's tone remained conversational and friendly, but Zarthul detected underlying currents that suggested this was not a negotiable point. Humanity had demonstrated the ability to defend their civilians by systematically dismantling the most powerful military alliance in galactic history. The message was clear. Such attacks would not be tolerated under any circumstances. Question: what would be required for Pathway 1 implementation? Vasquez consulted with what appeared to be other human researchers before responding. The Nexari Collective would need to formally withdraw from the Triarch Alliance, acknowledge human territorial sovereignty, and agree to participate in a galactic cooperation framework that we're developing. In exchange, we would provide technological assistance, research collaboration opportunities, and guaranteed protection from any species that might threaten Nexari civilian populations. Behind her, the displays showed preliminary designs for technologies that appeared to exceed Nexari capabilities by centuries. Consciousness transfer systems that could operate across galactic distances. Quantum processing architectures that could manipulate reality at the fundamental level. Research tools that could explore dimensions of existence that the Nexari had never suspected existed. It was an offer of partnership from a species that had revealed itself to be so technologically advanced that the question was not whether the Nexari could compete with them, but whether humanity was willing to share knowledge with species they clearly viewed as interesting but primitive younger siblings. Analysis complete. Pathway 1 represents optimal outcome for Nexari survival and development. Zarthul concluded after processing all available data. The Nexari Collective formally accepts human proposal for galactic cooperation framework. We request immediate withdrawal from Triarch Alliance and establishment of direct diplomatic relations with human government. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and this time the expression seemed genuinely pleased. Excellent. We'll begin the technology transfer protocols immediately. You'll find that cooperation with humanity offers significantly more interesting research opportunities than attempting to compete with us. Zarthul experienced what might have been described as relief if the concept had been applicable to distributed quantum consciousness. The Nexari had spent millennia believing they were the most advanced intelligence in the galaxy, only to discover they were students in a classroom run by teachers who had been observing their development with patient interest. It was humbling, but it was also the most intellectually stimulating revelation in Nexari history. Humanity had not conquered the Nexari Collective. They had offered them a place in a civilization that was apparently far more advanced and interesting than anything the galaxy had previously imagined possible. High Admiral Kreshtar of the Zephyrian Empire stood in the ruins of what had once been the most secure command bunker in known space, watching his civilization collapse in real time through a series of holographic displays that somehow continued to function despite the facility having lost primary power 6 hours ago. The irony was not lost on him that the displays were now operating on human-provided backup systems, installed by the same humanitarian relief workers who had arrived 3 hours after human forces had systematically disabled every piece of military equipment within 1,000 light-years of Zephyrian space. Around him, the surviving leadership of what had been the Triarch Alliance sat in uncomfortable silence, each species processing the scope of their defeat in their own way. General Thrakmor of the Krillian Horde stared at casualty reports that showed his fleets had suffered less than 2% fatalities despite losing every single ship. The humans had somehow managed to disable entire battle groups while ensuring that crew escape systems remained functional. Prime Consciousness Zarthul of the Nexari Collective existed as a mobile quantum processing unit, having evacuated from its compromised homeworld installations with what appeared to be human assistance. "Status report," Kreshtar ordered, though he already knew what his subordinates would tell him. "Sir," his intelligence chief replied carefully, "human forces have completed Phase 2 operations across all Alliance territories. Every military shipyard, weapons manufacturing facility, and strategic depot has been neutralized. However, civilian infrastructure remains completely untouched. In fact, many of our civilian populations report improved services since the humans began providing temporary emergency assistance to maintain basic utilities." Kreshtar's four eyes rotated to focus on different display screens, each showing the same impossible reality. Human relief teams were working alongside Alliance civilian administrators to maintain power grids, medical services, and transportation networks. The conquering forces were treating the conquered populations better than their own governments had in many cases. "What about our remaining military assets?" "Sir, we have no remaining military assets. Every warship, every weapons platform, every defensive installation has been disabled. However, the humans have left all personnel alive and are providing medical treatment to any injured. They've also guaranteed that no Alliance military personnel will be prosecuted for actions taken during the conflict." Kreshtar felt something that might have been described as existential despair if Zephyrians had possessed the emotional vocabulary for such concepts. His species had built their entire identity around military supremacy and the right of the strong to rule the weak. Discovering that they had been viewed as weak children playing with dangerous toys by a species they had dismissed as evolutionary failures was psychologically devastating on levels that transcended individual ego. "Sir," the communications officer called, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Morrison." The holographic display showed the same human commander who had been coordinating the systematic dismantling of Alliance military power. Behind her, Kreshtar could observe what appeared to be a massive command center with tactical displays covering every known star system in the galaxy. The scope of human intelligence gathering and coordination capabilities was staggering. "High Admiral Kreshtar, General Thrakmor, Prime Consciousness Zarthul," Admiral Morrison said, addressing each leader by name and proper title. "Phase 2 operations have been completed successfully. All Alliance military infrastructure has been neutralized with minimal casualties and zero civilian impact." She paused, consulting a display that showed real-time status updates from across the galaxy. "I am pleased to report the cooperation from Alliance civilian populations has been excellent. Our relief teams are working with your administrators to maintain essential services during the transition period." Kreshtar found his voice. "Transition to what?" "That depends largely on decisions you make in the next few hours," Admiral Morrison replied. "We have 3 proposals for post-conflict arrangements. Each has been designed to account for the specific cultural and political requirements of your respective species." Behind the Admiral, the displays shifted to show 3 different governmental models. Option 1, complete integration into the Human Galactic Cooperative. Your species would maintain cultural autonomy while participating in a broader galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. This option includes full technology sharing, economic cooperation, and collective security guarantees. The second display showed a different arrangement. Option 2, supervised autonomy. Your species would maintain independent governments while accepting human oversight of military development and foreign policy. This option allows you to preserve existing political structures while preventing future conflicts. The third display was noticeably simpler. Option 3, isolation. Your species would be relocated to designated systems with sufficient resources to maintain your civilizations, but with no contact with other galactic civilizations. This option would be permanent. Admiral Morrison's expression remained professionally neutral as she outlined what amounted to the complete restructuring of galactic politics. We should mention that the Nexari Collective has already chosen Option 1 and begun integration protocols. Several minor powers that were not part of the Alliance have also requested participation in the cooperative. Thrakmore leaned forward. What happens if we refuse all three options? General, that would initiate Phase 3 protocols, Admiral Morrison replied calmly. Phase 3 involves the complete termination of aggressive civilizations as a threat to galactic stability. We prefer not to implement Phase 3 as it contradicts our principles regarding the value of conscious life. The Admiral's tone remained conversational, but Kreshtar noticed that the tactical displays behind her briefly showed weapon systems that appeared capable of destroying entire star systems. We want to be clear that this is not a negotiation about whether your military capabilities will be permanently eliminated. That has already occurred. This is a discussion about what kind of future your species will have without those military capabilities. Kreshtar exchanged glances with Thrakmore, though communicating with the Nexari required different protocols since Zarthul existed as a distributed consciousness. All three leaders were processing the same fundamental reality. They had been outmaneuvered so completely that their only remaining choice was between different forms of surrender. Admiral, Kreshtar said carefully, what guarantees do we have that humanity will honor whatever agreements we make? Admiral Morrison smiled, and for the first time her expression seemed genuinely amused. Hi, Admiral. We've spent the last 72 hours systematically dismantling the most powerful military alliance in galactic history, while simultaneously providing medical aid to wounded enemy personnel and maintaining civilian services in occupied territories. What additional demonstration of our intentions could we possibly provide? She gestured toward the displays showing human relief operations across Alliance space. We could have simply destroyed your fleets and left your populations to deal with the consequences. Instead, we're offering technological assistance, economic cooperation, and collective security. The question isn't whether we'll honor our agreements. The question is whether you're willing to participate in a form of civilization that's based on cooperation rather than competition. Thrakmore spoke up. What about our military traditions? The Krillian Horde has existed as a warrior culture for thousands of years. General, we're not asking you to abandon your culture, Admiral Morrison replied. We're asking you to redirect your warrior traditions toward purposes that benefit galactic civilization rather than threatening it. There are plenty of opportunities for martial excellence in exploration, disaster response, and protection of developing civilizations. Behind her, displays showed human military units working alongside alien specialists on what appeared to be massive engineering projects, space stations being constructed around newly discovered worlds, rescue operations in hazardous environments, and exploration missions into unknown regions of space. The universe is a dangerous place, General. There are threats out there that require military capabilities to address. We'd prefer to face those threats with allies rather than having to police former enemies. Zarthul's synthesized voice joined the conversation. Query, what is the nature of these external threats? Admiral Morrison's expression became more serious. Prime consciousness, our exploration. Beyond the current galactic borders has identified several phenomena that pose potential risks to all known civilizations. There are indications of aggressive extragalactic intelligence, unstable dimensional barriers that could threaten entire star systems, and evidence of previous galactic civilizations that disappeared under unclear circumstances. The displays showed astronomical data that suggested threats operating on scales that dwarfed anything the Alliance had previously considered. Addressing these challenges will require cooperation between all available intelligent species, using every technological and intellectual resource we can develop. That's why we prefer Option 1 for all three of your species. Kreshtar reviewed the information being presented and realized that humanity was offering partnership in dealing with threats that would require capabilities far beyond what any individual species could develop. The humans weren't just offering to share their technology. They were suggesting that combined human and alliance capabilities might be necessary for long-term galactic survival. Admiral, Kreshtar said, the Zephyrian Empire chooses Option 1. We request immediate integration into the Human Galactic Cooperative. Thrakmore nodded agreement. The Krillian Horde also accepts Option 1. Integration protocols accepted, Zarthul confirmed. Nexari Collective will provide technical assistance for Zephyrian and Krillian integration processes. Admiral Morrison smiled, and this time her expression showed genuine satisfaction. Excellent. Integration teams will arrive within the next 12 hours to begin technology transfer and governmental transition protocols. You'll find that cooperation offers significantly more interesting opportunities than competition ever did. The Admiral consulted her displays again before continuing. I should mention that several species beyond the former Alliance territories have requested information about joining the cooperative. It appears that our demonstration of capabilities has generated considerable interest in voluntary cooperation rather than military competition. Kreshtar processed this information while reviewing tactical data that showed human forces maintaining perfect order across hundreds of star systems while simultaneously coordinating the largest governmental transition in galactic history. The scope of human organizational capabilities was as impressive as their military technology. "Admiral," Kreshtar asked, "how long have you been planning this transition?" "Hi, Admiral. We've been developing contingency plans for every possible galactic political situation for approximately 200 years. Current integration protocols represent implementation scenario 47, voluntary cooperation following demonstration of superior capability. It's actually one of our preferred scenarios." She paused, and her expression became slightly contemplative. "We should mention that this entire conflict has been educational for us as well. We learned valuable information about how various species respond to perceived threats, how quickly military alliances can be neutralized through coordinated action, and how civilian populations adapt to political transitions. This data will be useful for future integration scenarios." Experiencing what might have been described as philosophical vertigo. "Admiral, are you saying that this entire war was a learning experience for humanity?" "General, everything is a learning experience when you're dealing with forms of consciousness and civilization that you haven't encountered before," Admiral Morrison replied. "The universe is much larger and more complex than any of us fully understand. The more we can learn about different approaches to intelligence, culture, and technology, the better prepared we'll be for whatever challenges we might face." Behind the Admiral, displays showed star charts extending far beyond known space, with notations indicating ongoing human exploration missions in regions that the Alliance had never suspected existed. The scope of human activities was apparently galactic rather than local. "We're looking forward to working with all three of your species on these broader challenges," Admiral Morrison continued. "Your military capabilities, once redirected, will be valuable assets for exploration and defense against external threats. Your cultural perspectives will provide insights that purely human approaches might miss, and your technological innovations, enhanced through cooperative development, will benefit everyone involved." Kreshtar realized that humanity was offering something unprecedented in galactic history: genuine partnership between species based on voluntary cooperation rather than domination by the strongest. It was a concept that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of civilization, but the alternative had already been demonstrated with devastating effectiveness. "Admiral, when do we begin?" Kreshtar asked. "Hi, Admiral. We've already begun," Admiral Morrison replied. "Integration teams are standing by, technology transfer protocols are prepared, and governmental transition specialists are ready to assist with whatever political adjustments your species require." She smiled once more. "Welcome to the Human Galactic Cooperative. We think you're going to find it much more interesting than anything you've experienced before." The transmission ended, leaving the former leaders of the Triarch Alliance alone with the reality of their new situation. They had challenged what they perceived as the weakest species in the galaxy and discovered instead that they had been living under the benevolent observation of the most advanced civilization in known space. Now they were being offered partnership in something that promised to be far more ambitious and interesting than anything they had previously imagined possible. The Triarch Alliance had fallen not to conquest, but to an invitation to grow beyond their limitations. 3 years after the collapse of the Triarch Alliance, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching the impossible sight of Krillian, Zephyrian, and Nexari ships working alongside human vessels to construct what would become the largest space station in galactic history. The station hung in the gravitational balance point between 3 star systems, each representing one of the former Alliance species, now serving as the headquarters for the Human Galactic Cooperative. What made the site remarkable was not just the scale of the construction project, but the fundamental changes in the participating species themselves. Krillian warriors, once known for their savage efficiency in battle, were using those same skills to coordinate emergency response teams that could reach disaster sites across the galaxy within hours. Zephyrian military engineers were applying their expertise in fortification design to create habitat systems for newly discovered sentient species. Nexari quantum consciousness networks were being integrated with human dimensional manipulation technology to create communication systems that operated instantaneously across galactic distances. Status Report Ambassador requested Dr. Marcus Chen, the human coordinator for the station construction project, as he joined her at the observation window. Better than our most optimistic projections, Elena replied, reviewing the data streaming through her neural interface. Integration efficiency is running at 97% across all participating species. We've had fewer cultural adjustment challenges than any of our models predicted. She gestured toward the construction site, where beings from dozens of different species worked together using technologies that represented the combined knowledge of every known civilization. More importantly, we're seeing genuine innovation rather than just cooperation. The integrated teams are developing solutions that none of us could have achieved independently. Dr. Chen nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. Any word from the deep exploration missions? Elena's mood sobered slightly. Long-range reconnaissance teams have confirmed the presence of extragalactic intelligence approximately 200,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim. The signals suggest technological capabilities that may exceed even our current understanding of physics. She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy from an external perspective, with indicators marking human exploration routes extending far beyond the traditional boundaries of known space. Contact appears to be inevitable within the next 50 to 100 years, depending on their expansion rate versus our preparation timeline. This was the reason why humanity had revealed themselves and forced the rapid integration of galactic civilization. Their deep space monitoring systems had detected evidence of intelligence beyond the galaxy that operated on scales and used technologies that suggested they viewed entire galaxies as resources to be exploited or obstacles to be eliminated. Facing such a threat would require every available form of consciousness and technology working in perfect coordination. How are our new allies adapting to the threat assessment briefings? Dr. Chen asked. Remarkably well, actually, Elena replied. The Krillian military leadership adapted their strategic thinking to extragalactic scales within weeks. The Zephyrian Engineering Corps immediately began developing defensive concepts for protecting entire star systems. The Nexari Collective started running probability models for contact scenarios that we never would have considered. She paused, reviewing reports from across the cooperative's expanding territory. I think we underestimated how quickly intelligent species can adapt when they're presented with genuine challenges rather than artificial competition for limited resources. Behind them, the main communications console activated with an incoming transmission from Earth. The message was from Admiral Morrison, now serving as the Cooperative's Director of External Relations. Ambassador Vasquez, Dr. Chen. Admiral Morrison's image appeared in the holographic display. I'm transmitting the latest intelligence briefing from Deep Survey Mission 17. You'll want to review this immediately. The display shifted to show astronomical data from humanity's most advanced exploration vessels, operating at distances that required months for communication to reach inhabited space. What Elena saw made her revise her previous estimates about contact timelines. Admiral, these readings suggest active dimensional manipulation on a scale that affects entire galactic clusters, Elena observed. The extragalactic intelligence isn't just expanding, they're reshaping space-time itself to facilitate some kind of mega-engineering project. That's our assessment as well, Admiral Morrison confirmed. We're looking at evidence of technology that can manipulate fundamental forces across distances of millions of light-years. If these beings continue their expansion at current rates, they'll reach the outer edge of our galaxy within 20 years rather than 50. Dr. Chen leaned forward to study the data more carefully. Admiral, do we have any indication of their intentions toward existing galactic civilizations? Negative, Dr. Chen. We have no data on their interaction protocols with other forms of life. However, the scale of their operations suggests they may not distinguish between inhabited and uninhabited space. They appear to be implementing projects that would render normal matter-based life impossible across vast regions. Elena felt the familiar combination of excitement and concern that characterized humanity's relationship with the unknown. This was exactly the kind of challenge that had driven human technological development for centuries, but it was also potentially an existential threat to every known form of life. Admiral, recommendations for accelerating integration protocols. We're implementing Emergency Scenario 12, Accelerated Technological Development for External Threat Response, Admiral Morrison replied. All participating species will receive immediate access to our most advanced technologies, along with full briefings on the nature of the external threat. We're also expanding the cooperative to include every sentient species we can contact within the next 5 years. Behind the Admiral, Elena could observe the massive coordination efforts that were already underway. Human ships were deploying to systems throughout the galaxy, carrying integration teams, technology transfer specialists, and defense coordinators. The scope of the operation dwarfed even the systematic dismantling of the Triarch Alliance. Status update on current cooperative membership? We now have 47 species participating in full integration protocols, with another 112 requesting preliminary contact. The rate of voluntary cooperation has exceeded all projections. It appears that most intelligent species prefer partnership to competition when given genuine alternatives. Admiral Morrison paused, consulting data from sources across the galaxy. We've also received contact requests from civilizations beyond our previous exploration range. Word of the cooperative's success has apparently traveled through communication networks we weren't aware existed. Elena processed this information while watching the ongoing construction outside the observation window. What had begun as humanity's response to the Triarch Alliance's aggression had evolved into the foundation for a truly galactic civilization that might be capable of facing threats operating on extragalactic scales. Admiral, what's our current assessment of defensive capabilities against the external threat? Preliminary analysis suggests that current cooperative resources would be insufficient for defense against technology operating at the scales we've observed, Admiral Morrison replied honestly. However, integrated development programs are showing promise beyond our original projections. The combination of human dimensional manipulation technology, Nexari quantum consciousness networks, Krillian adaptive military doctrine, and Zephyrian mega-engineering capabilities is producing innovations that none of us could have achieved independently. She gestured toward displays showing research projects involving species that had been mortal enemies just 3 years earlier. We're developing technologies that may actually exceed the capabilities we've observed from the external intelligence. The key is coordination and integration rather than individual advancement. Dr. Chen spoke up. Admiral, are we prepared for the possibility that peaceful contact might be possible with the extragalactic intelligence? Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. Dr. Chen, we're prepared for every possibility we can imagine, and several that we probably can't. We have diplomatic protocols ready for peaceful contact, defensive strategies prepared for hostile contact, and evacuation plans for scenarios where neither approach proves sufficient. She paused and her expression became more serious. However, we should be realistic about the challenges we're facing. We're dealing with intelligence that operates on scales we're only beginning to understand, using technologies that may be fundamentally different from anything we've encountered. Our best strategy is to become as capable and unified as possible before contact occurs. Elena reviewed the current status of cooperative development programs and felt cautiously optimistic about their progress. In 3 years, they had transformed galactic civilization from a collection of competing species into an integrated cooperative that was approaching technological and organizational capabilities beyond anything previously imagined. Admiral, when do we expect to complete Phase 1 of the defense preparation protocols? Ambassador, we completed Phase 1 6 months ago, Admiral Morrison replied with satisfaction. Phase 2 involves expanding our defensive capabilities to protect the entire galaxy rather than just cooperative territory. Phase 3 involves developing the capacity to respond to extragalactic threats on their own scale. Behind the Admiral, displays showed the true scope of human and cooperative activities: deep space installations extending far beyond the galactic rim, research facilities investigating dimensional barriers between galaxies, defense platforms capable of protecting entire star systems, communication networks that operated across distances that had previously been considered impossible. We estimate completion of Phase 2 within 18 months, Admiral Morrison continued. Phase 3 is more challenging, as it requires technological capabilities that we're still developing. However, early results from integrated research programs suggest we may achieve breakthrough developments sooner than originally projected. Elena turned back to the observation window where the construction of Harmony Station continued under the coordination of species that had been trying to exterminate each other just 3 years earlier. The transformation had been so complete and successful that it was difficult to remember how different things had been before humanity revealed their true capabilities. Admiral, Elena asked, what's your assessment of our chances for long-term success? Admiral Morrison was quiet for several moments before responding. Ambassador, 3 years ago we were planning for the possibility of having to defend human space against a hostile galaxy. Today we're preparing to defend an integrated galactic civilization against threats from beyond the galaxy itself. She paused, and her expression showed the cautious optimism that characterized humanity's approach to impossible challenges. Our chances are significantly better than they were before we revealed ourselves. Whether they're good enough remains to be seen. The transmission ended, leaving Elena and Dr. Chen alone with a view of ongoing construction and the knowledge that they were part of something unprecedented in known history. Humanity's gamble, revealing their true capabilities to force rapid integration of galactic civilization, had succeeded beyond anyone's most optimistic projections. Now they would discover whether that success would be sufficient for the challenges ahead. Elena activated her personal communication system to contact the Cooperative Council, which included representatives from all participating species. Council session requested for priority briefing on external threat assessment updates. Within minutes, responses came back from across the galaxy as Krillian generals, Zephyrian engineers, Nexari quantum consciousnesses, and dozens of other species confirmed their availability for immediate consultation. The speed and efficiency of response demonstrated how completely the galaxy had transformed from a collection of competing civilizations into a unified cooperative focused on common challenges. As Elena prepared for the briefing, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity had spent centuries appearing weak while secretly preparing for the possibility that strength might be necessary. When that moment came, they had revealed capabilities that transformed galactic politics overnight. But the most remarkable aspect of the transformation was what it had revealed about the potential of intelligent species when they were given genuine alternatives to competition and conflict. Every species that had joined the cooperative had contributed capabilities and perspectives that enhanced the collective far beyond the sum of individual contributions. The Triarch Alliance had attacked human civilians to test human weakness. Instead, they had triggered the birth of a galactic civilization capable of facing challenges that no individual species could have imagined, let alone addressed. Looking out at the impossible sight of former enemies working together to build something greater than any of them could achieve alone, Elena felt confident that whatever they encountered beyond the galaxy would find them ready. Humanity had stopped pretending to be weak. The galaxy had discovered what they could accomplish when they stopped pretending to be separate.